Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah that we both receive as an inherited tradition. We add to with our own essence and being and sense of respect and creativity, and we pass it on as an enriched body of tradition as well. So this week we are in Parshat Tetzaveh, which is in the book of Exodus. It begins with chapter 27 at verse 20, and we will read together our English translation of our weekly portion. I'll share with you about a little focused study about it, and then we'll have our collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute at this time, together we can recite a blessing giving thanks for this moment. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai,
Adonai,
Eloheinu
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 melech
haolam,
haolam,
asher
asher
kiddushanu
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 mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav,
v'tzivanu
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 la'asot
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 b'divrei
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
Thank you,
Amen.
God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. I'll
Amen.
share with you the opening verses of this week's portion, and I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. You shall further instruct the Israelites to bring you clear oil of beaten olives for lighting, for kindling lamps regularly. Aaron and his sons shall set them up in the tent of meeting, outside the curtain which is over the ark of the pact, to burn from evening to morning before Adonai. It shall be a dew from the Israelites for all time, throughout the ages. We're now at chapter 28. Richard, would you like to read a little bit at the very start of chapter 28?
Yes, if I can find it here. You shall bring forward your brother Aaron with his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron. Make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron for dignity and adornment. Next, you shall instruct all who are skillful, whom I have endowed with the gift of skill, to make Aaron's vestments, for consecrating him to serve me as priest. These are the vestments they are to make: a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a fringed tunic, a headdress, and a sash. They shall make those sacred vestments for your brother Aaron and his sons, for priestly service to me. They, therefore, shall receive the gold, the blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and the fine linen. They shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen worked into designs. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached, that they shall be attached at the 2 ends. And the decorated band that is upon it shall be made like it, of 1 piece with it, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. Then take 2 lazuli stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on the 1 stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. On the 2 stones you shall make seal engravings, the work of a lapidary, of the names of the sons of Israel, having bordered them with frames of gold. Attach the 2 stones to the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones for remembrance of the Israelite people, whose names Aaron shall carry upon his 2 shoulder pieces for remembrance before the Lord.
Thank you, Richard. Mark Levinstein, would you like to continue there at verse 13?
Thank you, Rabbi. Which one?
13.
13.
Then make frames of
And make
gold.
frames of gold and 2 chains of pure gold. Braid these like corded work and fasten the corded chains to the frames. You shall make a breastpiece of decision, worked into a design made in the style of the ephod. Make it of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. It shall be square and double, a span in length and a span in width. Set in it mounted stones in 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a row of carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald. The second row, turquoise, a sapphire, and amethyst. The third row, jacinth, an agate, and a crystal. And the fourth row, a beryl, lapis lazuli, and a jasper. They shall be framed with gold in their mountings. The stones shall correspond in number to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 corresponding to their names. They shall be engraved like seals, each with its name for the 12 tribes. On the breastpiece, make braided chains of corded work in pure gold. Make 2 rings of gold on the breastpiece and fasten the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, attaching the 2 golden cords to the 2 rings at the ends of the breastpiece. Then fasten the 2 ends of the cords to the 2 frames, which you shall attach to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. Make 2 rings of gold and attach them to the 2 ends of the breastpiece at its inner edge, which faces the ephod. And make 2 other rings of gold and fasten them on the front of the ephod, low on the 2 shoulder pieces, close to its seam above the decorated band. The breastpiece shall be held in place by a cord of blue from its rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breastpiece rests on the decorated band and does not come loose from the ephod. Aaron shall carry the names of the sons of Israel on the breastpiece of decision over his heart when he enters the sanctuary for remembrance before the Lord at all times. Inside the breastpiece of decision you shall place the Urim and Thummim, so that they are over Aaron's heart when he comes before the Lord. Thus Aaron shall carry the instrument of decision for the Israelites over his heart before the Lord at all times.
Thank you, Mark. Dave, would you like to continue there at verse 31?
You shall make the robe of the ephod of pure blue. The opening for the head shall be in the middle of it. The opening shall have a binding of woven work round about. It shall be like the opening of a coat of mail, so that it does not tear. On the hem, make pomegranates of blue, purple, and crimson yarns all around the hem, with bells of gold between them all around. All around a golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe. And Aaron shall wear it while officiating, so that the sound of it is heard when he comes into the sanctuary before Adonai, and when he goes out, that he may not die. You shall make a frontlet of pure gold and engrave it on the seal inscription, holy to Adonai. Suspend it on a cord of blue so that it may remain on the headdress. It shall remain on the front of the headdress. It shall be on Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may take away any sin arising from the holy things that the Israelites consecrate, from any of the sacred donations. It shall be on his forehead at all times, to win acceptance for them before Adonai.
Thank you, Dave. And Jim, would you like to read a little bit, starting there at verse 39?
Thank you, Rabbi. You shall make the fringed tunic of fine linen. You shall make the headdress of fine linen. You shall make the sash of embroidered work. And for Aaron's sons also you shall make tunics, and make sashes for them, and make turbans for them, for dignity and adornment. Put these on your brother Aaron, and on his sons as well. Anoint them, and ordain them, and consecrate them to serve me as priests. You shall also make for them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. They shall extend from the hips to the thighs. They shall be worn by Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting, or when they approach the altar to officiate in the sanctuary, so that they do not incur punishment and die. That shall be a law for all time for him and for his offspring to come.
Thank you, Jim. Let me invite Justin and Linda. Would you like to read a little bit at the very start of chapter 29?
Thank you, Rabbi. And this is the thing that you shall do for them to sanctify them to serve me as Kohanim. Take 1 young bull and 2 rams, perfect ones, and unleavened bread and unleavened loaves, mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil. You shall make them out of fine wheat flour, and you shall place them upon a basket, and you shall bring them in the basket, and the bull and the 2 rams, and you shall bring Aaron and his sons near the entrance of the tent of meeting, and you shall bathe them in water. And you shall take the garments and clothe Aaron with the tunic, with the robe of the ephod, and with the koshen, and you shall adorn him with the band of the ephod. You shall place the cap upon his head and place the holy crown upon the cap. You shall take the anointing oil and pour it on his head and anoint him. And you shall bring his sons near, and you shall clothe them with tunics, and you shall gird them with sashes, Aaron and his sons, and you shall dress them with high hats, and the kahuna will be a perpetual statute for them, and you shall invest Aaron and his sons with full authority. You shall bring the bull to the front of the tent of meeting, and Aaron and his sons shall lean in their hands upon the head of the bull.
You shall then slaughter the bull before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. You shall take some of the blood of the bull and apply it on the horns of the altar with your finger. You shall pour out all the blood upon the base of the altar. You shall then take all the fat that covers the innards and the diaphragm with the liver, also the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and make them go up in smoke on the altar. But the flesh of the bull, its hide, its dung, you shall burn in fire outside the camp. It is a sin offering. And you shall take 1 ram, and Aaron and his sons shall lean their hands upon the ram's head.
You shall slaughter the ram, and you shall take its blood and sprinkle it on the altar all around. And you shall dissect the ram into its parts, and you shall wash its innards and its legs and put them with its parts and with its head. And you shall make the entire ram go up in smoke upon the altar. It is a burnt offering made to the Lord. It is a spirit of satisfaction, a fire offering for the Lord.
Oh, thank you both so much. Beautiful reading. Let me invite Catherine. Would you like to continue there at verse 19?
Thank you, Rabbi. Then take the other ram, and let Aaron and his sons lay their hands upon the ram's head. Slaughter the ram, and take some of its blood, and put it on the ridge of Aaron's right ear, and on the ridges of his sons' right ears, and on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet, and dash the rest of the blood against every side of the altar round about. Take some of the blood that is on the altar and some of the anointing oil, and sprinkle upon Aaron and his vestments, and also upon his sons and his sons' vestments. Thus shall he and his vestments be holy, as well as his sons and his sons' vestments. You shall take from the ram the fat parts, the broad tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the protuberance on the liver, the 2 kidneys with the fat on them, and the right thigh, for this is a ram of ordination. Add 1 flat loaf of bread, 1 cake of oil bread, and 1 wafer from the basket of unleavened bread that is before the Lord. Place all these on the palms of Aaron and his sons, and offer them as an elevation offering before Adonai. Take them from their hands, and turn them into smoke upon the altar with burnt offering, as a pleasing odor before Adonai. It is an offering by fire to Adonai.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And Sherry and Steve, would you like to read a little bit, starting at verse 26?
Thank you.
Then take the breast of Aaron's ram of ordination and offer it as an elevation offering before the Lord. It shall be your portion. You shall consecrate the breast that was offered as an elevation offering, and the thigh that was offered as a gift offering from the ram of ordination, from that which Aaron's and from that which was his son's. And those parts shall be a due for all time from the Israelites to Aaron and his descendants, for they are a gift, and so shall they be a gift from the Israelites, their gift to the Lord out of their sacrifices of well-being. The sacral vestments of Aaron shall pass on to his sons after him, for them to be anointed and ordained in. He among his sons, who becomes priest in his stead, who enters the tent of meeting to officiate within the sanctuary, shall wear them 7 days. You shall take the ram of ordination and boil its flesh in the sacred precinct, and Aaron and his sons shall eat the flesh of the ram, and the bread that is in the basket, and the entrance of the tent of meeting. These things shall be eaten only by those for whom expiation was made with them when they were ordained and consecrated. They may not be eaten by a layman, for they are holy. And if any of the flesh of ordination or any of the bread is left until morning, you shall put what is left into the fire. It shall not be eaten, for it is holy. 35, Steve. 35.
Thus you shall do to Aaron and his sons, just as I have commanded you. You shall ordain them through 7 days, and each day you shall prepare a bull as a sin offering for expiation. You shall purge the altar by performing purification upon it. You shall anoint it to consecrate it. 7 days you shall perform purification for the altar to consecrate it, and the altar shall become most holy. Whatever touches the altar should become consecrated. Now this is what you shall offer upon the altar: 2 yearling lambs each day regularly. You shall offer the one lamb in the morning, and you shall offer the other lamb at twilight. There should be 1/10 of a measure of choice flour with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil mixed in a libation of 1/4 hin of wine for one lamb. And you shall offer the other lamb at twilight, repeating with it the meal offering of the morning with its libation, an offering for fire for a pleasing odor to the Lord, a regular burnt offering throughout the generations at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. For there I will meet with you, and there I will speak with you. And there I will meet with the Israelites, and shall be sanctified by my presence. I will sanctify the tent of meeting and the altar, and I will consecrate Aaron and his sons to serve me as priests. I will abide among the Israelites, and I will be their God, and they shall know that I, the Lord, am their God, who brought them out from the land of Egypt, that I might abide among them. I, the Lord, their God.
Thank you both so much. Deborah, would you like to read a little bit the start of chapter 30?
Okay, thank you. You shall make an altar for burning incense. Make it of acacia wood. It shall be a cubit long and a cubit wide. It shall be square and 2 cubits high, its horns of one piece with it. Overlay it with pure gold, its top, its sides round about, and its horns, and make a gold molding for it round about, and make 2 gold rings for it under its molding. Make them on its 2 side walls, on opposite sides. They shall serve as holders for poles with which to carry it. Make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Place it in front of the curtain that is over the ark of the pact, in front of the cover that is over the pact, where I will meet with you. On it, Aaron shall burn aromatic incense. He shall burn it every morning when he tends the lamps, and Aaron shall burn it at twilight when he lights the lamps, a regular incense offering before the Lord throughout the ages. You shall not offer alien incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a grain offering. Neither shall you pour a libation on it. Once a year, Aharon shall purge its horns with blood of the purification offering. It shall be purged once a year throughout the ages. It is most holy to Adonai.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. That's our entirety of our weekly Torah portion, Tetzaveh. I'd like to share with you a focus study about it. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out. So the primary focus of this week's portion is a description of the garments that are to be made for the high priest. It also describes a process for sanctifying the priests, which is to take place over 7 days. So just as the Mishkan itself is to go through a period of inauguration, so are those priests who are going to be leaders of the service there. So I focus in my study this week on the words that are used to describe the garments that are to be made for Aaron and his sons serving as priests. So here in the study sheet number 1, make holy garments for your brother Aaron for glory and beauty. And the words for glory is kavod and for beauty tiferet. So I picked up on that because these are rather unusual words. They don't occur very often within Torah. In fact, the word kavod is used quite often, but when it's used outside of the context of Tetzaveh, kavod refers to the glory of God. So here in Tetzaveh, it's being used in application to human beings. So everywhere else, kavod refers to the glory of God. Here, it's used twice and refers to something that is to be endowed upon the body of a human being. So that's interesting to me. And then the other word is the word tiferet. Tiferet is used only 3 times in Torah. Twice it is used here, and the only other time it's used in Torah is much later in the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses is speaking to the Israelites and says to them, God made you for praise, for name, for tiferet. We're here to, so he's, in a sense, Moses is describing the essence of our existence, our purpose, what it was that God endowed upon us. And what we're endowed with is that we're here to do good, we have distinction, and we're noble. What this Torah portion introduces is a sense, if you will, of endowment in things that are glorious and beautiful and colorful. And so in a sense, it introduces an element of the aesthetic into this venture that the Israelites are on. And it reminds me of this moment when Moses is told to make the Mishkan. And the verse says, you shall make it as you saw it on the mountaintop. And a lot of commentary goes in, well, what exactly did Moses see on the mountaintop? And the Midrash says, Moses saw fire. He saw red fire and blue fire and green fire and yellow fire. And Moses says, this is what I'm supposed to make a Mishkan out of, fire. And so the notion there is that these fires of imagination are really what is to be imbued upon what becomes a physical structure. So the physical structure is supposed to be constructed primarily of these fires of imagination. So if we combine this together, the Mishkan, which is going to be inaugurated, the priests in their garments are to be inaugurated, they are all, if you will, enrobed in these fiery, beautiful colors that come from some kind of divine and human imagination. So I'd like to explore this notion about, here we are, we're having this kind of contact between imagination and something that is material. And I want to explore a little bit different poets and artists who have tried to capture this sense of what does it mean for imagination to become realized materially. I start off with a quote from Rav Kook. Rav Avraham Kook was considered is the first chief rabbi in the land of Israel in the 20th century. He's also a Kabbalist and a mystic. And let me share with you what he said about imagination, and I'll say a little bit more about him. He wrote, "The fierce power of imagination is a gift from God, joined with the grandeur of the mind, the potency of inference, ethical depth, and the natural sense of divine. Imagination becomes an instrument for the Holy Spirit." Rav Kook was a great endorser of the Zionist project to come into the land of Israel and to work the land. And he was roundly criticized by his fellow Orthodox rabbis, who were quite suspect to the whole Zionist enterprise, largely in part because it was led largely by secular Jews, and also because those secular Jews who were coming during this stage of making Aliyah to Israel in the early 20th century, in addition to being secular, they felt that rather than God, it was going to be the labor of working the land that was going to save the Jewish people. So most Orthodox rabbis felt that these were heretical statements. They felt that we were going to not settle the land of Israel to be a Jewishly spiritual place dedicated to the Jewish religion. But Rav Kook felt quite differently. He thought that he was very supportive of him, and he felt that this was going to be good in the long run for the Jewish people. So in a sense, it was his way of his profound sense of imagination somehow was finding its way to weave itself together with this group of people who had nothing but contempt, if you will, for Jewish religion, but they were engaged in a very material project of working the land and creating a nation. So here we are, Rav Kook is finding some way to weave together the spiritual imagination with this very material work of working the land. So with that, I want to share with you the painting for this evening, and that is a painting by Camille Pizarro called Haymaking at Erani. Pizarro, as you may know, was born into a diasporic Sephardic Jewish family. He was born on the island of St. Thomas, and then when he's in his 20s, he doesn't want to have anything to do with his father's business, which was a merchant trading business on the island of St. Thomas. He longed to be an artist of some kind, and he began sketching, although he was far, far, far away from the center of the world of art at the time, which was Paris. And then in his 20s, he goes to Paris to deepen his study. And he becomes, of course, not only a member of the Impressionist movement, really he and Monet really are the founders, if you will, of the Impressionist movement. And Pizarro in particular becomes kind of the organizer. He writes the charter that the artists sign into that describes their purpose and describes how they will fund themselves. So he's very much a father figure to many of them. He mentors many of the artists, and in particular, he's a great mentor to Cezanne and Van Gogh. After his death, Cezanne will say about Pizarro, he was the father of us all. So one of the things that is unique about Pizarro is that among all the Impressionists, he goes to spend the majority of his life living in the countryside. He has a large family to whom he's very devoted, and the Impressionists in general kind of turn their back on classical art in many ways, including what is an appropriate subject to paint. And of course, in classical art, the proper subjects were those that would uplift people's spirits, that would somehow be perfections of beauty. And the Impressionists instead embrace aspects of everyday life. And Pizarro, when he moved to Erani, he filled hundreds of canvases with scenes of peasants at work in the field. Among all the Impressionists, all of whom painted landscape paintings, Pizarro was unique in the fact that almost every one of his landscapes has human beings in it. And here we have this painting of haymaking at Erani, and you see in the front a woman who's raking in the hay harvest, surrounded on either side. You've got these the beginnings of an orchard, these two trees that almost look like they're dancers, the way they are bent and curved. And in the background, you have other people working in the fields, and the orchard goes on a little bit. And what Pizarro was identifying was, this is where the truth and beauty is found. He said, bless those who see the beauty in the most humble of things. Politically, he himself was actually an anarchist, and he turned to people who were domestic workers, people who were rural workers, people who worked in the village markets, and these are the people that he blessed with his paintbrush by placing them on a canvas. So with that as a kind of the image and a sense of one artist who is now giving a place of honor on a canvas to those who are working the fields, I'd like to share with you now one of the great American poets, Wallace Stevens, who in 1941 gave a lecture at Princeton University in which he was grappling with the notion about the relationship between imagination and reality, because the reality that was surrounding him was quite desperate. This was the early stages of World War II, but going before that, he had experienced a kind of a collapse of human culture and civilization by what he saw as the decline of a sense of spirituality in the 19th century, some of the brutality that was captured by some people who took Darwin's theories and talked about the survival of the fittest and tried to apply that to social human relations. And then, of course, Freud, who talked about how much of human behavior is driven by these unconscious impulses that we have. And so he looks at these desperate times, and he talks about the value of poetry as a capacity to bring a source of illumination to the moment. And here's what he wrote sometime a few years later in a book called The Necessary Angel: Essays on Reality and Imagination. Poetry is an illumination of a surface, the movement of a self in rock. The imagination loses vitality as it ceases to adhere to what is real. In a sense, this reminded me of what Rav Kook had been doing, because what Stevens is pointing to is that imagination is not a counterpoint to reality, that there is some kind of critical interplay between reality and imagination. There is a fusion, if you will, of spiritual imagination that's grounded in this secular material world. So if you'll turn over, I want to share with you, kind of take us now into some what's happening within our Torah portion. We read our Torah portion the week before Purim, the story that we read in the book of Esther. And I find these hinted connections between the book of Esther and this Torah portion. Well, first of all, on a very material level, we see this dressing that's going on in Tetzaveh, this costuming of the priests as a way to transform them to play an elevated role. And of course, that is what we do during Purim. We enrobe ourselves in a way to transform ourselves as a way to become bearers of wisdom and goodness. There's also these elements of the text that link the two, the book of Esther and Parshat Tetzaveh, because this phrase kavod u'tiferet, which describes the garments in this Torah portion that are to be worn by the high priest, the only other place where they are put together as a phrase is in the book of Esther. And there they describe the robes that are being worn by King Ahasuerus as a sign of nobility. So that evokes this portion, Tetzaveh. There's something also compelling about that connects the book of Esther and Parshat Tetzaveh. If you notice, as we were reading through our Torah portion, Moses' name is never mentioned. In fact, it's the only book of Torah outside of Genesis. It's the only portion where Moses' name is not mentioned. There must be something significant about his absence. What does it mean? And what's significant textually about the book of Esther is that it is the only book in the Jewish Bible where God's name is never mentioned. There's something significant about the absence of the supreme, if you will, authority figure, God, being absent from the book of Esther, and the human primary protagonist in Torah, that authority figure, Moses, he is absent from this Torah portion. That, to me, ties these two together in some kind of way. What does it mean that these authority figures are missing in Esther, and what does it mean that it's missing in our Torah portion? Well, the hint, I think, is given by one of the great lines that comes in the book of Esther, where Esther is wondering what should she do now that she's aware that Haman is plotting to kill all the Jews in the kingdom. Because if she goes to the king, first of all, to go to the king without being bidden by the king, that could be a capital crime. And then the reason for going would be, if she's going to go, she's going to have to reveal, I'm a Jew as well. If you let Haman kill all these people, then I'm to be killed as well. So she's pondering whether she should expose herself and make herself vulnerable in this kind of way. And her uncle, Mordecai, says to her, who knows? But you have come to your malchut, but for such a time as this. So the word malchut means kind of sovereign. And in the narrative dimension, of course, what he's referring to is the fact that she's risen to this status of being royalty. She's the queen. So he's saying, who knows but that you won this beauty contest and were picked out by Ahasuerus to be his queen, just so you could be someone who could save your people. But the sense of sovereignty is not just a material level, but on a spiritual and psychological level. Sovereignty refers to someone who has fully actualized themselves as a human being, who has risen to the level of what it means to be in charge of oneself, to know oneself, to be able to conduct oneself as a responsible, fully responsible human being. And so on the spiritual level, Mordecai could be saying, who knows but that you've reached this level of development, but to be able to go and say to the king, this is wrong and you need to stop it. And so the fact that God is never mentioned here in the book of Esther is an indication that it's not an intervening external divinity that saves the Jewish people. It is a human being who has developed so fully that they are capable of fulfilling this ultimate act of responsibility of saving the lives of others. And interestingly enough, Purim is the last holiday in the Jewish calendar. Passover is the first holiday in the Jewish calendar. And in a sense, one can read the Jewish calendar as a journey in and of itself describing what does it mean to become a human being. And so Passover is describing this birth, this infancy, and this adolescence, where one needs to be not only birthed, but then needs to be fed, needs to be guided, needs to be given rules of behavior, needs to be led by the hand until they're grown up and they can take care of themselves. And so Esther is the fulfillment of that year-long journey, if you will. She is now a fully grown-up adult who can not only take care of herself, but she can be a responsible human being and save the lives of others as well. So here is returning now to our poet, Wallace Stevens. He wrote a poem called Angels Surrounded by Paisans. And it's a poem in which he imagines there is a group of peasants, maybe like the peasants who are here in Pizarro's painting. And they are suffering, and life is difficult for them. And then, he says, an angel comes forth and is able to shed light for them and to help them be redeemed. But it's not an angel that is from heaven. It is one of the peasants herself. So here is a couple of lines from that poem. I am the necessary angel of earth, since in my sight you see earth again, cleared of its stiff and stubborn man-locked set. I wanted to suggest that the Torah as a project is about the transformation of self and the creation of a community of mutual caring and responsibility. And that it will be necessary angels of the earth who will inspire a re-envisioning of the world, one that's cleared of narrow and constraining ways. I'd love to hear what you experienced, what you felt, what you saw, what you heard as we were going through this week's Torah portion. If you raise your hand, I'd so love to call upon you. Richard.
Thank you, Rabbi. The thing that impresses me about these words, splendor and so forth, is that they're talking about a radiance. That's something that's not transferred through words, but transferred through affect or empathy or radiance or whatever it is that speaks from heart to heart between people and beyond the material world. And that the notion of Am Haaretz, earth people, men from the earth, man of the earth. I remember my grandfather, very, very staunch. He's very proud to be a man of the earth because they're not peasants, they're not workers, they're people taking care of our mother, the earth. They're involved with it. It's very much, and when we have the ceremonies regarding bringing in of the products at the end of the Sukkot, that always to me is a thankfulness not for the food, but for the capacity of the human being to govern themselves, to be able to get a harvest out and bring it to market and feed the widow and the orphan. And the oligarchs got no clue. And I see the wedge between the classes, the moneyed class, the ones that think they're priests and have a lot of power in the material world and look down on the peasants because they're nothing. And we deal with that daily. Daily we deal with that. And your point today seems to be what I catch in this is, gee, this is right for this week in the planet Earth. This is what's going on the planet Earth. The failure of the so-called priestly class to make a decision that that puts in jeopardy the people who do the work. And let alone that, it's the damage it's doing to their ability to grow, as has Esther through her year of understanding. To become, and I remember we read about the spies came back and said, we can't do this, they're too big for us. And your statement, no, they just know it's impossible. These people are too divided to ever come to an agreement. And what are we left with? And this is my last comment, that we've been studying and singing Felix Mendelssohn's Prayers of Praise. And the phrase he has, the dark days are done. And therefore, we have to give up our dark ways and gird ourselves to the armor of light. And that's what this light is. It's the regular light that's called in this session. Well, regular, you do it every week. Perpetual light. Well, that's regal. Regular is regal and is perpetual. And that's the light that comes out of Torah when we study it and integrate it. That's the light we have to gird and girding yourself is putting on your armor. We gird ourselves with the armor of light. And I think that's what this is asking us to do. And I think your statement that she's not just doing this because she's the queen, it's because she's become regal by her nature, and she has a vibration which is going to make Ahasuerus melt.
Oh, wow, very rich. So first of all, I keyed in on your notion about the radiance, which I'll talk about in a second, and affect, and heart to heart. And what it reminded me is that in this text that we just read, one of the key elements of the garment that the high priest is to wear are these 12 stones, each stone representing one of the 12 tribes. And the rabbis, when they discuss that, they say what that represented was that the high priest, when conducting the service on behalf of anyone, is to remember whom he is doing this for, and that he is to have a love for all these 12 tribes. So that's one thing.
He's to be enabled by their energy within him.
Beautiful, thank you. And then I also thought more about these three figures that I've introduced to us on the study sheet. Rav Kook, Wallace Stevens, and Camille Pizarro, and how each one of them, in their own way, wove together imagination and the earth. And Pizarro in his paintings, Stevens in this poem I shared with you, and in his speech in which he said, in order to be truly transformatively effective, imagination somehow needs to be tied to reality. It can't spin off and be abstracted from it. And of course, Rav Kook, who defied all of his fellow Orthodox rabbis by embracing these people who on the surface were anti-religion, who wanted to work the land, somehow he sensed that this would be something that would bring about a flourishment and a revival of the Jewish people. So thank you so much for kind of enabling me to revisit this in a rich way. Let me call upon Catherine and Sherry and Steve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's a tough act to follow. I was looking at the painting and thinking about how these farmers are doing something in preparation for something. They're making hay in preparation for something. They're sort of preparing the groundwork. And I found a parallel with Aaron in relationship to Moses, that Aaron has to sort of provide, if you will, the spiritual infrastructure for Moses' dialogue with Adonai to continue. And what you just said about this awareness of the 12 tribes, right, that they have to be accounted for in these spiritual works. Yeah, that's sort of where I was taking this.
Beautiful. I love this notion about the groundwork. Because sometimes when we think about spirituality, we think it is something that is somehow separated from the ground.
Right, ethereal, right?
Ethereal, yeah. And here, all this material is kind of reversing that.
Yeah.
It's going to be from the ground up that we will experience spiritual. And of course, that is at the very heart of Jewish spirituality in general, which is the notion that it is a ground up experience, not a separation from the ground. Yeah, so thank you so much that's beautiful. Thank you. Let me call upon Sherry and Steve. You've got your hand up there. Please share with us.
Well, there are two things, and I don't know which to bring up first. I'm intrigued that you mentioned self-actualization and mentioned Esther. So I went down a rabbit hole and looked up Abraham Maslow's self-actualization, and there's a lot of material here, but there were a few things here I thought were interesting. The characteristics, according to Maslow, self-actualization, acceptance. Self-actualized people accept themselves and others and have little guilt or shame or anxiety. You mentioned spontaneity, a sense of purpose, realistic. They are realistic and problem-centered, independence, and they value privacy and humor. They have a philosophical sense of humor. So I thought that was really interesting when you brought up self-actualization. I just decided to do that. The other thing I wanted to go to, and it's just more of a comment and a question to ask you. I was kind of shocked, looking at the painting, and then instead of, which is just such a beautiful, idyllic, pastoral kind of scene, and then you go into 4 p.m. on September 7th, 1940. And I remember, and about the horrific bombing of London, and also, going back and so on, and that you chose that. So and it reminded me of, where we are today. And, I spend a lot of time in the news and whatnot. Not as much as I used to, but the far right, which is the neo-Nazi party in Germany, just won, and you probably know this, other people know this, it won 20% of the vote. They came in a strong second in this last election. And, it just being reminded of this piece of history, kind of reminded me of just how fleeting our memories are on so many things. And I'm curious why you talked about the bombing of London and you went immediately into Wallace Stevens and of course Freud. And I'm just wondering what your thinking was. I mean, tying this all together.
Well, because started out by thinking about Wallace Stevens and his sense of the role of the poet and the value of imagination in helping us to illuminate new paths, and his sense that imagination is not something that is an act of withdrawing from reality, but draws from reality. And I recognize that he gave this critical speech at Princeton in May of 1941. And I knew that he was very influenced in his approach by his outlook on what had happened in culture, human culture, over the preceding half century or more. And so I thought, well, what was happening? I thought to myself, well, what was happening at the moment when he was giving that speech? And that's when I realized, it was the final bombing of the Blitz of London was happening. So to me, it was that having him make that speech within that context, and it was, no one knew in May of 1941 how things were going to go in terms of the war with Germany. And so here is someone who's saying, ever more so do we need to have a writer, what he called a writer who is going to take us through this moment of darkness and dislocation, and the writer being the poet who's the conveyor of imagination. So ever more so do we need, during these dislocating and dark times, a source of imagination, but not as a way to block out what's happening around us, not as a way to hide from what's happening from us, but to draw from what's happening around us and to construct a way that enables us to see a new world. And that's the line from the poem, where this is the necessary angel of the earth enables us to see the earth again. So that's how it all occurred to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can add something positive that I see the hay there, the wheat, and that why French bread is better than American bread. And they made the same recipes in the same chefs in New York and in Paris, and used American wheat with French wheat, but the French wheat is better, and they did a chemical analysis and found out that it's cobalt makes the difference. And cobalt is the thing that goes in all of the cathedrals in France, and the windows are blue, and that's from the cobalt. So that's what just occurred to me.
So I'm also, you got me thinking about all the blue that pervades all the synagogues in Sfat, in the land of Israel.
The doors.
Yeah, all the doors there. Thank you.
Well, they may have cobalt there too.
Cover the blood.
How's the bread in Savat? Is that better than anywhere else?
It was to cover the blood.
Let me invite anyone else like to share with from this evening's encounter with this text and this painting and this poetry. Well, let me kind of bring us together then to say there are so many stunning artists out there, poets and painters and actors and musicians. And sometimes we can forget when we get enraptured by these stunning displays of creativity. Sometimes we forget that we each carry imagination and creativity within us as well. And sometimes we express that by how we garden, how we farm, and hopefully most of all, how we relate to one another, with a sense of sharing the light within to encounter the light in the person across from us. So in a sense, if you will, that is the light that Esther maybe was sharing, that all of the grandeur of being a queen of an empire means nothing if you can't help people to survive and defeat the dark drum of destruction and cynicism. And if that never discount what it means to just reach out to another human being, especially in days when destructive cynicism and brutish behavior seems to be on the ascent. So I thank each and every one of you for being the artist that you are in your own unique way and for making this world a better place. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. Look forward to our gathering next time. Be well, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
A wonderful
you.
session.
Yeah, very, very good.
Very provocative.
Very right. Thought provoking. Yeah. Very deep. Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good night, everyone. Thank you for your input.